Hello everyone, my name is Jane and welcome to my February wrap-up. So it's time to wrap up February, and honestly, I'm just glad that the month is over. Unfortunately, I didn't have a really great reading month. It wasn't good. Let's just say that the majority of the books that I read were 3 stars, which is really sad. I feel like I just kept reading more and more books, and every one of them kept being another 3 star, and it was really frustrating. I feel like in the beginning of February, I read a lot. I was really in a reading mood. Honestly, I couldn't really stop reading, and then in the second half of February, I just got to the state that I can't read anything, which is okay. I feel like this break after all of those 3 stars will be really good for me now in March, because now I have the need to read again, which is amazing. But yes, unfortunately, February wasn't the best, but I'm still really excited to share all of the stats and all of my thoughts with you today. There is just a lot, so I think that let's start, like always, with the monthly reading stats. Now in February, I read a total of 9 books. It's still around 10 books a month, which is amazing. And one of my goals this year is not to try read too many books and not to pressure myself. So I feel like 9 books is really good. Like I'm still ahead of my reading challenge this year. Now format is really interesting. I read 1 physical book, 3 audiobooks and 5 ebooks. I really got into ebooks recently, so I'm not surprised that I'm reading so many ebooks, but I actually read only 1 physical book this month, which is pretty crazy. Like sometimes I read less physical books, but I don't think that I ever read only 1 physical book. But I will definitely try in March reading much more for my physical TBR, because I do want to lower my physical TBR. The good thing is that out of the 9 books that I read in February, 3 of them were on my physical TBR. Only 1 of them I read physically, the other 2 I read in the end in the audiobook, but at least I got the number of my physical TBR down by 3, which is still really great. Now the next stat is the languages. Most of the books that I read are in English, but one of my reading goals in 2022 is to read each month at least 2 books in my native language. So I did it. I still completed this goal, which is amazing. I just really want not to forget the books in my native language. But yes, I'm feeling really proud that so far I'm completing my goal, which is really good. Now let's talk about age group. I read 4 YA books and 5 adult books. I feel like it's okay. I always tried to read more adult books, so I feel like it's still good. Like most of the books are adult, which is good. Now standalone versus series. I read 6 standalones and 3 series. I do read mostly more standalones because I'm intimidated by series. Now the thing is that the 3 series that I read were a first book in a series, and I don't really need to start out of series right now, but I noticed that every month I start a lot of series, and it doesn't mean that I will continue them. And like the 3 series that I read this month, only 1 of them I really want to actually continue. So I feel like it's okay to start a lot of series, because I read a lot of first books in a series as a standalone, because usually I don't continue those series. The average pages per book that I read in February is 322. Now the thing is that last month it was 460, so it's like a huge difference. Usually my average pages per book is less than 400, but this number is really close to 300. But I feel like it's logical because I did read mostly short books this month, so I feel like this is the reason that I was able to read 9 books in February. But I'm okay with it, because sometimes you just read short books, that's okay. And genres. This is always my most favorite stats to look at. The most read genre is romance. I feel like for the past few months, my most read genre is romance, and it's okay by me because I'm really in a romance mood and I just really enjoy reading romances, and I read 4 romances. All the other stuff I read only 1 of. 1 contemporary, 1 mystery thriller, 1 sci-fi, 1 graphic novel and 1 manga. And the thing is that I'm never sure where to put mangas and graphic novels, but this is more or less the genres that I read. And star ratings. This is the really sad part, because like I said, most of my reads were 3 stars. I had only 1 4 star, so I had only 1 book that I loved this month. I had also 1 3.5 stars, which is nice. Still okay, I can accept it. But 6 of the books that I read in February were 3 stars, which is so sad. It's just so sad. And I had also 1 2.5 stars, which is really close to 3 stars. But yes, my average star rating for the month of February is 3.11, which is really low. Like, it's ridiculously low. I feel like I didn't had such much a lower average star rating in a long while. And again, I'm really frustrated from it, but that's okay. It said that February wasn't the best reading month, but I have a feeling that March will be really, really good. I'm still really positive that the rest of the year will be amazing, especially because January was a really good reading month. So that's okay. We just all have those kind of months sometimes. And now, before I will go over all the books, I want to go over the prompts that I got for my TBR game, the TBR of Colors. One of my reading goals is to actually complete the prompts because I'm a mood reader. I never complete the books. Like usually I read something like half of the books on my TBR, which is still really, really good, but I never complete my TBR fully. But I really want to actually complete the prompts. So this is something that I will be tracking every monthly wrap-up. Now the prompts that I got in my TBR game this month are those prompts, and the first one was red, and I did complete it. I read Cheer Up, Love and Pom-Poms. There is a lot of red on the cover. The second prompt, Purple, I also completed. I read Ice Planet Barbarians. There is 2 editions and one of them is purple, so I definitely completed it. Now the next prompt is green, and this is the only prompt that I'm going to cheat a little bit because I won't say that the majority of the cover is green, but I personally still think like there is enough green for me to consider it a green book. And this book was the rare one. Like the boy is wearing green shorts, I feel like it can count. And the next color was a yellow, which I also completed. I actually read a lot of yellow books this month, but the first one that I read was Late to the Party, so I did complete yellow. And the last prompt was blue, and I also completed it. I read Astra Lost in Space Volume 1, so I did complete all of my TBR games. So far, I'm completing everything. I'm so proud of myself. And yes, so for February wasn't good. I at least completed all of the prompts, which is amazing. Now I will go over talking about all the books that I read in February. Last month in my January wrap-up, I tried to talk about all the books in a different order, and I decided to try and to do it from my least favorite book that I read to my most favorite book that I read. So like not in the order that I read them, but from least to most favorite. And I actually really enjoyed it. It was really fun to decide which book is better from the other. So I'm going to do it again. It was pretty rough to choose between all the 3 stars because I had so many of them and all of them were pretty average to me. So it was hard to decide what I enjoyed more than the other. But still it was fun to choose everything. And I will start with my least favorite book of the month. And this book is Reckless Girls by Rachel Hawkins. This is a standalone thriller mystery. It has 320 pages. I read it as an audiobook and I finished it in one day. And my rating for this book is 2.5 stars. Now, basically, this is a tropical thriller mystery that got me really interested to pick it. It's a new release. It was only released, I think, in February, if I'm not wrong. And basically, in this book, we're following a couple, and this couple meets 2 women, and those 2 women are paying for the couple to take them in a boat, because this couple has a boat, to an island for them to explore this island and just to have a vacation on this island. And I have to say that I love the setting. Like, it was so fun to read something that takes place in a tropical island. I do think that it could be much more atmospheric and much more tropical than it was, but I still really enjoyed the idea. It was really fun, and I think that I love pretty summery settings, so I definitely enjoyed this aspect of the book. But the thing is that I felt like it's supposed to be a mystery thriller, and it wasn't a mystery thriller. Like, I feel that throughout all the book was really slow-paced, not with a lot of plot and not characters that I can really connect to. And throughout all the book, it felt like this, and only the last part of the book really started to get more serious and more fast-paced, but most of the book wasn't like this. And if there is something that I really hate in books, is that a book's supposed to be one genre, for example, in this, a mystery thriller, but actually it's not this genre. Like, I really hate it. And I feel like just in overall, this book wasn't really exciting for me. I wasn't really waiting for anything. Nothing really made me thrilled to continue reading it. It was a pretty quick read, and like, I finished the whole audiobook in a day, but I just feel like this book was really underwhelming, and it was pretty disappointment for me, especially because I really loved the idea. And also this book had the now and then trope, if you can call it like this. Like, we had chapters also now in the current time of the story, but also chapters about the past. And usually I don't really love those kind of books. So I just feel like in overall, it isn't a bad book. It was pretty average for me. And the reason that this book isn't a regular 3-star rating for me is just personal preference of also the now and then trope, and also this not really feeling to me like a thriller. So I feel like this is just a personal preference, and in general it was okay, but 2.5 stars, a little bit less than average. Now the next book is Cheer Up, Love and Pom-Poms by Christine Frassier, Well of Wise, and Oscar or Jupiter. Now, this is a standalone. It's a graphic novel and a contemporary story. It has 128 pages, the shortest book that I read in February, and I read it as an ebook also in one day. And the rating that I gave this graphic novel is 3. And the thing is that this graphic novel is also the lower 3 that I gave this month. Like from all the 3 stars that I read this month, this is my least favorite one. Now, the thing is that the idea was really good, and especially the representation was amazing. We're following 2 teenage girls. The first one is a trans, which was so interesting for me to read something with a trans character. I really want to read more things with more representation, and I feel like specifically graphic novels almost always have a great representation. This is like another reason that I really love graphic novels, and one of the main characters here was a trans, and I really love this aspect of the story and the representation and how she is dealing with it. And the second character was her best friend from the past. Now they are becoming friends again, and there is also a sapphic romance there. But in overall, I felt like this book was the perfect example for a graphic novel that is too short. I do read a lot of graphic novels, and a lot of graphic novels feel too fast and too short. It's logical. It takes so much time to do every illustration, so I just imagine to myself how much time it takes to do a graphic novel, and it's a lot of time. So I can get why graphic novels tend to be shorter, but I feel like out of all graphic novels that I read in my life, I feel like this one was the most short, fast-paced one, and I felt like nothing here was enough. I felt like there was too many subjects that the graphic novel tried to talk about, and not enough pages to actually show them. I do think that this graphic novel should have been or longer or with less subjects, because the pacing was so fast. And also there was so many parts in the book that something happened, and the graphic novel says that those characters had something in the past, but we don't know what happened, and it just didn't make sense to me as a reader, and I feel like I can't really understand what is going in the current relationship of the characters, because I don't know the full picture of what happened. So I feel like this book really disappointed me, especially because it was with really good representation. So yes, I'm just pretty sad from this book, but it happens sometimes, and yes, this graphic novel just wasn't really for me. Now, the next book is a book that I'm really sad that this book is on the lower half of this list, because I was really expecting it, and I really anticipated to really love this book. And this is The Spanish Love Deception by Elena Hermes. Now, I read this book for the Enchanted book club. We have a live show discussing this book, so I will link the live show in the video description so you can see my full thoughts about this book. Now, this is a standalone. It's a romance contemporary. It has 482 pages, so it's a pretty long romance. I read it as an audiobook, and it took me 4 days to finish it. Now, the thing is that before I will start saying anything about this book, 100%, I think that if I read it physically, I would enjoy it so much more. I didn't love the narrator of the audiobook, and just in overall, it wasn't a really good audiobook, and this is my fault. I just needed to make more time for myself to actually read it physically, but unfortunately, I didn't really have time for it. But in overall, the thing is that this is a romance story, and it's a very hyped up romance story, and I feel like me as a romance reader, romance is one of my main reading genres. I read so many romance in my life. I need more in a romance book for a romance book to surprise me and to make me enjoy it, because this is definitely a story that I just feel like I read before. This is just enemies to lovers, fake dating. It was a really fun book. Like, it was so fast paced. It was really fun and just really enjoyable read. I do think it's a solid book, and I can really get why it's so popular. And I also really enjoyed the main character in the story. I feel like it was really good and really fun to read about. But except the audiobook and except it being just a romance that I feel like I already read, I also really disliked the main character. I also didn't really love her family, but especially the main character, I didn't like her or how she chose to act. I couldn't really connect to her, and I feel like if you don't really connect to the main character, you can't really enjoy the book. And again, if you want to see my full thoughts, I will link the live show in the video description so you can check it. But just in overall, it was pretty disappointing and just a pretty generic romance book. Now, the next book is another contemporary, but this is a YA one. This is Late to the Party by Kelly Quinlan. This is a standalone. Like I said, it's a contemporary. It's pretty much a coming-of-age story, and there is also romance. It has 304 pages. I read it as an audiobook, and it took me 3 days to finish. And basically, in this story, we're following a teenager, and this teenager is the naughty girl at school. She has 2 best friends, but she doesn't really know anyone except them. She isn't popular, and she didn't do anything that usually teenagers do. Things like going going to a party, kissing for the first time, and just everything. And this book is a coming-of-age story of her meeting more popular kids and her finding her first love. And I realized on myself that I personally really love why coming-of-age stories. Like, usually I really enjoy this concept, and I really like the themes that this book explores. I feel like the subjects were really good subjects for a coming-of-age story, and in the start it was really hard for me to get connected to the story, but in the end I was much more connected. But in overall, I still don't feel like I was really connected to this book. I feel like there is other YA coming-of-age stories that I read that I loved so much more, and I feel like the writing was the biggest problem for me in this book. The writing wasn't bad, it just wasn't for me. I feel like I just didn't really vibe with the writing. So yes, it was a nice book, like it still was more enjoyable than Cheer Up and The Spanish Love Deception, but in general, it's just an average book that I probably won't really remember in the future. Now we're getting to the more enjoyable 3 stars, and the next book is The Swedish Prince by Karina Halley. This is the first book in the Nordic Royals series. This series has 4 books, and every book follows a different couple. So it's like standalones in a series. It's an adult romance, and it has 464 pages. I read it as an ebook in my native language, and I finished it in 2 days. And basically here we're following a woman that tragically her parents got killed, and now she needs to take care of her family. Although she already went to college and she started her life, but now she needs to stop everything to take care of her family because they don't have money. Most of them are minors, and they need some adult that will take care of them. And she's getting back to her hometown, and for a year or 2 years she's going back to work in a hotel where her mother worked at, and her life are pretty miserable. She's having a really hard time, especially because she don't really have any break. But then one day she meets a man in this hotel, and throughout the story she's finding out that this man is actually the Swedish prince. And I feel like the beginning of this book was really good. First of all, it's a really steamy book. I read it for the smart, and I feel like this book definitely delivers. So if you are looking for a smarty book, this is definitely a really smarty book, and I also think that the steam was really good. But I feel like the beginning started really good. The first half of the book was really enjoyable for me to read. The second half of the book really made me dislike a lot of parts in the story. In general, I feel like it was too instant love for me. Like, this is the top of this book, I can understand it, but I feel like it was too much for me personally, and especially the second half of the book already felt pretty meh to me. Like, I didn't really enjoy it. I felt like it was too fast paced and not enough depth for me to actually connect to what is going on. And I do feel like it's a good book, and it's just those kind of books that are a personal preference thing. And I did really enjoy the smart. So if you're looking for a smarty book, I do think that this book was really smarty. And about the series, I won't continue reading the series because I'm not really interested to continue this kind of story, but I might try the 4th book in the series. I think this book name is The Nordic King. I feel like this book is so hyped up. Like, I saw so many people really recommending this book and saying that this is the best book in this series. So I might check this book, the 4th book, but except this 4th book, I will probably won't read the rest of the series. Now, the next book is 100 Days of Sunlight by Abby Emmons. This is a standalone. It's a romance contemporary. It has 311 pages. I read it as an ebook, and I finished it in 3 days. The thing is that the reason that I started with this book is also because it went well with the prompt I needed for a readathon, but also because I follow Abby Emmons' YouTube. She's a writer YouTuber, so she does a lot of tips for writing and how to be a writer. So it was really interesting for me to read one of her books and to see how she is using those methods of her that she is sharing with the world. And basically in this book we're following 2 teenagers, and there is a disability representation here because the first character, the main character, is a teenage girl that lost her sight because of an accident, and she's blind. But the thing is that the doctors believe that in 100 days she will start seeing again, but the main character isn't really sure if this is what is going to happen. And at the same time we're following another teenager, and this teenage boy is someone who lost his legs, and he's finding out about this teenage girl, and he's going to her house to basically try to help her to deal with her disability because he also has a disability, so he really knows how she is feeling. Now the thing is that I didn't really enjoy the plot of the girl. Like, it was nice, but just average in overall. I didn't really felt anything for her, and I really loved the POV of the boy. Also, his chapters in the current time of the story, but also there was a lot of chapters in the past that basically tell the story of how he lost his legs. And those chapters were really hard to read and really emotional and really touching. And I have so many mixed feelings about this book. And I already said it, but I usually don't enjoy when books are going to the past. Like, usually I feel like it's just really stuck and not related to the story. But in this situation, the past chapters were my favorite chapters in the book. But although the past chapters were really emotional, I feel like the current time of the story from the POV of the boy didn't really make sense to me, especially because the way he acted, like, I still enjoyed his character so much more than the girl one, but his character was those kind of characters that are doing something without thinking about it. And this is also one of the reasons that he went through such a tragic thing. And I feel like realistically, when someone will go through something like this, he will stop being so careless because he actually lost his legs because he wasn't careless. And the thing is that in the current time of the story, the character of the boy kept being really reckless and really not responsible. And there was also a lot of scenes that didn't make sense to me because I felt like he was too much of a superhuman. And although he has a disability, I didn't really see how this disability actually affected him and how it made his life more miserable. I just feel like the whole representation thing in this book could have been done so much better in both the ways, in both of the characters. Overall, it's still one of the more enjoyable 3 stars that I read this month. I still feel like it was pretty fun to read it. So I think overall this book could have been better, and I do think that I would really love it if I read it as a teenager, but today not really. Now the last 3 stars before we will get to the 2 better books that I read this month is Dear Aaron by Mariana Zapata. Now this is a standalone, it's a romance contemporary, it has 500 pages, the longest book that I read this month. I read it as a book in my native language and it took me 3 days to finish it. Now it's pretty funny because I think that I'm trying to read one Mariana Zapata book every month. Like, first time I read her books in December, and since then it's already the 4th month that I'm reading one book by her. So I might just continue this trend and read throughout the year 1 book a month by Mariana Zapata because so far I really enjoy her writing. And basically here we're following a story of a soldier and a woman, and this woman starts to write to the soldier. It's a part of a program that they are getting pen pals and they are starting to talk mostly in emails, and it's basically a romance story. Like, they are talking in emails and then stuff happens. And the thing for me is that I enjoy the writing. I really love Mariana Zapata's writing style, but the part of the book that they were talking in emails and in messages felt really repetitive. And the thing is that when I started with this book, I was so excited about this part and it made me really intrigued to keep reading, but it became repetitive really quickly, and I feel like it was too much. And because it wasn't a real chapters with real people that are talking between each other, it was literally only messages, I feel like there wasn't as much depth as there could have been if it was like a regular book without emails and texts. And usually I really enjoy mixed media in books, so I was really disappointed that this mixed media didn't really work for me. Now the second thing is that I didn't really love the main character. She was really childish and she felt a lot like a teenager, and honestly it felt to me a little bit like a teenage coming of age story because she needed to deal with a lot of stuff throughout the story. So I feel like she was just a teenager that learned a lot throughout the story, which is good, but still I didn't came here to read a YA coming of age story. I came here to read an adult romance. I feel like just the romance and everything was pretty lacking. Like, I still enjoyed it because it's a romance and because I love her writing, but in overall it wasn't really a special book for me. I feel like it would be pretty forgettable, but I still feel like it was a little bit more enjoyable than the other 3 stars, just in overall because it's a fun romance story that I did enjoy. It's definitely not a Mariana Zapata book that I would recommend starting with because the other 2 that I read were so amazing, like another level. So yes, it was pretty disappointment for me, especially because I did expect more because this is Mariana Zapata. Now the next book is my 3.5 stars. Finally, a book that I actually liked and really enjoyed from, and this is Ice Planet Barbarians by Ruby Dixon. Now basically this is the first book in a really long series. There is something like 20 books in the series, and this is if you're not considering the health books because there is a lot of add-ons and a lot of health books. But with the health books, I really think that there is at least 40 books in the series. Like, this series is super long. And basically, this is a romance sci-fi series. It has 188 pages. I read it as a book and I finished it in 2 days. But this is basically just an adult, steamy sci-fi romance. And we're basically following a woman that was abducted by aliens. And she is waking up in a spaceship with more women that also got abducted. But then something happens and those aliens are sending those women to another planet to be there until those aliens will come back to take them because there was some problem in the spaceship. And this new planet is basically winter all the time. It's like an ice planet, and in this planet the women are meeting aliens men. And the thing is that I really try to get more into sci-fi this year. Like, I really want to read more sci-fi, and the thing is that I'm also getting more and more into sci-fi mood, which is amazing. So I was really interested to read a sci-fi but also a romance because I love romance, and this is definitely a really steamy romance. And the thing is that this is a very weird, smutty romance. It's like about aliens, and there is so many weird stuff here, but although it was so weird, I actually really enjoyed it. Like, it's definitely a smutty book. I would say most of the book was smutty scenes, which is understandable, but the thing is that except those smutty scenes, the rest of the plot was actually logical and actually solid. Like, yes, the book in summary is weird, but it was logical. The plot was actually good and interesting to read. Like, actually the plot, not the smutty scenes. Only the plot was interesting enough for me to want to keep reading it. The characters were really likable in my opinion. Like, I really enjoyed them. I also feel like they acted like their actual age. They weren't childish. So like, world building, plot, characters, everything was good. And again, the smut was weird, but I actually really enjoyed it. Like, I personally feel like the smut was really good and fun to read and interesting to read, although it was really weird. But the reason that it was 3.5 stars and not a 4 star is firstly because I do feel like the plot itself, not the smutty scenes, but the rest of the plot was really slow. But I feel like a lot of smutty books that are mostly smutty books, like mostly around this theme, are like this. For those smut scenes to make sense, the plot needs to be slow enough. So I feel like the plot was pretty slow, and although this book was really short, I feel like it took me time to read it and it took me time to get through this book because the pacing was really slow. But still, in general, it was really enjoyable. 3.5 stars is so much more for me than 3 stars, so I still really enjoyed it. Would I continue reading the series? I'm not sure. I might if I want really weird steam story, but I don't really think so, especially because I feel like the rest of the series will start to become a lot around breeding and a lot around babies, which I don't really enjoy in books. So I feel like the series will just become a lot around babies and making more and more babies, which for me isn't really interesting to read, but I still really enjoyed the first book, and I do think it's a book that I would recommend if you're looking for a really weird, smutty book, because this is definitely a really weird one, but I personally still really enjoyed the weirdness of this book. So yes, I think it was a really great time. Now we got to the last book, the only 4 stars of this month. This is the only book that I can actually say that I loved, that I want to read more of it, and this is Astra Lost in Space Volume 1 by Kenta Shinohara. Now this is basically a manga, and like you can probably guess from the cover, it's a sci-fi manga. I say to you, I'm trying to get more into sci-fi, so my 2 favorite reads out of this month were sci-fi, so it just makes me want to read more and more sci-fi. But basically, this is a sci-fi manga. It's a 4th volume out of 5. It has 208 pages, and I read it as a physical manga in 1 day. So this is the only book that I read physically this month, because the other physical books I read as an audiobook. And basically in this story, we're following a group of teenagers that in the current time of the story travel into space. It became something really generic. People just started to go to a vacation in space. It became something really regular. And also in this current time of the story, taking children to space became just a school trip. So basically we're following a group of teenagers that are going first time to a school trip to space. And the thing is that the concept of this school trip is for them to explore space by themselves without any adults. So they are going to space and the adults are leaving them. And then some really strange things happening. And they find themselves lost in space. And the thing is that I was so surprised from this manga. I got a few mangas in my recent book haul because I really want to get more into manga in 2022. And honestly, out of all the mangas that I got, I think this one was the one that I was least excited about. I was still really excited to read it. Like, obviously I bought it so I can read it and enjoy it, but I wasn't sure how much I'm going to enjoy this book. And I was so surprised from it because I was was so impressed from the story. I feel like also the world building, also the characters, also the plot, just everything was done so well. It wasn't perfect, but I still feel like it's such a good and solid read. I really enjoyed it. I read both, also the second and also the fourth volume in this manga because I would definitely be continue reading it. I feel like this manga made me connected enough to the characters to actually want to continue reading about their story and about what is going to happen. And the plot was pretty fast paced. I feel like so many things happened here. And just in general, I really enjoyed it. Like again, this is the only book this month that I actually loved. I would definitely continue the rest of the volumes. And yes, I just feel like it was really fun to read it. And I hope to read the second volume soon. And yes, this was my February wrap up. All the 9 books that I read this February. Like you saw, almost everything were books that I just felt meh about. Just the average book that I don't think they are bad. They weren't just personally for me. But that's okay. I'm really excited about March. I do think that March is going to be so much better. I'm already so much excited to get back into reading and to read so much more books that hopefully I will actually love. And yes, I really hope that you enjoyed this video. Please tell me what is the best book that you read in February. I really hope that at least for you, February was better. But yes, let's hope for an amazing March reading month. And I will see you in the next video. Bye everyone.